Well, the reason for the career switch was several-fold. Uh, One was I had recently come back from Europe in 2008 and was very had experienced the local food movement and the European style of eating in southern France, and between that and reaching a point here in Granbury with my law career, came to a crossroads with it, and one of the main things that drove it was the fact that I was didn't like what we were eating in this country, and I started researching local foods in many areas, not just cheese. And at some point, ran across an article about Stuart Veldhuizen over in Dublin, Texas. First of all, cheese is the phenomenon of making cheese is a magical thing for me, and the there's many factors that intrigue me about cheese making. One of them is that it's a traditional way to take a product like milk that's very perishable and turn it into something that's not as perishable like cheese. And it's a technique that was learned centuries, thousands of years ago, actually, to take this highly perishable product and turn it into something that's not as perishable, and also make something that tastes really good that we've never really improved on. So you factor that in with the great people that I've met during the course of my cheese making career, which is now I'm in my fourth year of, or actually fifth year since I actually learned to make cheese and got interested in researching it. It's just great folks that are involved with it, dedicated people, and people that tend to be professionals in what they're doing. Well, a hard question to answer because I have lots of favorite cheeses. Depends on what day it is and what mood I'm in. I love the mountain raclettes from the French Alps. That's one of my favorite cheeses, always has been. And we started actually making mountain raclette right here at Eagle Mountain Cheese. I love gorgonzolas. I like blues. I like other blues. The Gruyeres, a lot of cheeses from Switzerland. Most people, when they think of Swiss cheese in this country, can only think of the cheese that has holes in it. But there are many cheeses from Switzerland that have that don't have the holes. A lot of different varieties that come from Switzerland that people don't really know about. Well, I've got a lot of German heritage, and so Germany is my usual first place to go when I go over there. And I speak German as a second language. Well, actually, that's a misnomer. I've studied German as a second language. Speaking it is something else. Uh, it, I love going to Germany because it gives me a chance to work on my German. And again, there is a food ethic over there. One of the things I first noticed the first time I went to Europe and went to Germany, for instance, where people still go in the little villages, the little towns that are outside of the bigger metropolitan areas. People get up in the morning and they still go to the Metzgerei to get their meats, and they still go to the Bäckerei to get their bakery products, and they go to the cheese place to get their cheeses. They go to the vegetable stand to get whatever vegetables are in, or fruits and so forth that are in season at the time. And it's a time for them to conduct their social visits as well. And most people walk, that live in the smaller villages walk every place. So Germany is a good place for me to start. But I like France. I love Switzerland. I like Italy. Have not been to England yet, but hopefully one of these trips I can get to England, Scotland, and Ireland. Well, it's still to me a magical thing, a magical event when you've got a living product like whole raw milk in a container, and you put a culture in there, and it's really, there's some invisible things happening that we can't see with our naked eye, but we know that things are happening in that milk, and the cultures are basically turning the lactose, the sugar that's in the milk, into lactic acid, and putting in the milk in an acidic environment so we can add our coagulant to it. And the magic is when you add the coagulant to this liquid milk, after the starter culture has done its thing for a while, and less than an hour later, you've got a container full of curds. So to me, that still is an amazing transformation, like the larva to the butterfly, that is still amazing. So we get all of our milk from Sandy Creek Farm in Bridgeport, Texas. Mike and Debbie Moyers. They're milking registered brown Swiss dairy cows. Mike is the former president of the Brown Swiss Breeders Association, and so he's also a breeder by trade. And we happened to meet at a very opportune time because Mike was researching getting into the raw milk business, grade A raw for retail, which in Texas is perfectly legal. So far, the powers that be have not encroached upon that right that we all should have to have whatever foods we want. And he was looking into doing raw for retail at about the same time I was looking in going into the cheese making business. And I had originally looked into buying land and buying cows and putting in a dairy, and then I realized that was way more than I could bargain for as far as work was concerned and knowledge. I had no knowledge about being a dairy person. And so when I found Mike, it was great because he knows how to do that part to get me to get Eagle Mountain the great milk that we're getting. And then it allowed us to focus primarily on the cheese making part of the cheese making business. Yes, our business is growing. We made our first batch of cheese at this facility here in Granbury on January the 10th, 2010. And we've grown about 75 to somewhere between 75 and 100% a year in sales every year since. And that wouldn't say much if we only sold $1 worth the first year, but we did pretty well considering we didn't actually start selling cheese until about June of 2010. So that year we only really sold for 6 months. As you may know, in the cheese business, there's a leap of faith that one has to go through because the cheeses we make with raw milk have to be aged a minimum of 60 days. So when we started making cheese, we had no idea what our market would be, how it would work, if people were going to like our cheese, or even if our cheese was going to be that good until we started making it regularly. And at some point you just got to start making cheese on a leap of faith that 2, 4, 6, 8 months down the road that cheese is going to hold up and be a good product. Luckily for us, we've been making some really good cheese, and after a lot of trial and error beforehand, and so we're steadily trying to improve our product, but in the same respect, our growth has been very systematically, sustainably growing on a nice level uphill pattern. The biggest reward, because I'm going to twist that a little bit because I know where you're headed with that, the biggest reward we get is to watch people try our cheese for the first time and go, wow, we really like that cheese, and they buy it. It's always satisfying for all of us when we go to farmers markets and go to demo cheese. Our biggest award was so far is in Montreal. We're members of the American Cheese Society. I went to my first ACS being American Cheese Society, went to my first ACS conference in Austin, Texas, the year I started putting this business together in 2009, and went to the first Festival of Cheese at that event and was completely blown away. I mean, we're talking 1,500 different cheeses at the Festival of Cheese. And so I decided that in 2010 I would like to enter a cheese. Well, since I didn't start making cheese till January of 2010, 10th of January of 2010, we were not eligible to put cheese in until the 2011. So the first time we were eligible to put cheese into the judging was in 2011. The judging and the conference was held in Montreal, Canada, and for our category, which was an international style cheese made in this country, we took a first place for our Trappist style cheese called Burtville Reserve, and that was quite a unique experience for us, because you just don't plan on things like that happening. But it certainly gave us some excellent feedback. I had many of my friends that I had developed who are making cheese. Not that there's that many of them in Texas. What are there, 20, 25 of us making cheese in Texas? But several of my peer group said, you ought to just turn the cheese, you ought to enter a cheese just to get some feedback. The ACS gives you very good feedback, and it gives give you something to strive for. And I thought, well, that's probably a good idea. And I would say a first place blue ribbon is pretty good feedback. I'll take that feedback anytime.